what's to know if you're on my left or my right? Now, you don't exist unless you're amplified. This is a skill I don't have to expect to tell to a 78er. This woman was one of the people that night up the cross when 53 people were so brutally arrested. Would you please give her another warm round of applause? In this short moment, we want to give a focus to young people who are here today who perhaps are hearing about 1978 for the first time. So, Di, what are 3 things that a Year 12 student should know about what happened in 1978? What's the first thing?
The first thing is that 1978 wasn't the first gay and lesbian demonstration. They started in 1971 in Sydney. And in 1973, there was the first national gay and lesbian demonstrations in about 4 cities, so that we call that national.
And even before the gay liberation movement, which was influenced by the gorgeousness coming from San Francisco, we had Camp Inc., an organisation based in Glee.
We did indeed, and they ended up having the telephone counselling service, which was very, very instrumental in helping lots of young gay and lesbian people.
And if you want to learn more about this, the ABC is going to be showing a film called Riot shortly, which endeavours to convey what we're talking about now. What's the second thing about 1978 that you think young people need to know?
It was very brutal, it was very confronting, seeing the violence, which I did, experiencing the violence, which my friends did. Those arrested had their names, addresses and occupations published prominently in the Sydney Morning Herald, and it had lots of consequences for people.
And what sort of consequences?
People lost their jobs, people lost their families, people lost their accommodation.
And your third message about 78, you think it began an upsurge. What do you mean?
Well, it was an upsurge in activism. We had a massive drop the charges campaign. Nearly all the charges got dropped from those arrested, because we weren't even arrested even under the laws at the time properly. And it led to the Summary Offences Act, which police used to use to grab us and harass us and all sorts of things. And then it led on to anti-discrimination and law reform. We don't claim credit for that, but the upsurge of activism was part of it.
Very unusual for someone not to claim credit. Would you agree? This woman is not a natural politician, she's more an activist. Now, why should any young person in this crowd care about what happened 40 years ago?
Because it's still relevant, because Mardi Gras is a beacon for young LGBTIQ people everywhere, here and overseas. And even though we've got huge legal changes and marriage equality now, there is still homophobia in regional and rural areas of this country, and overseas, homosexual people still face the death penalty in some countries.
Yes, homosexuality is still illegal in over 70 countries, and many of them have the death penalty, and all of them have migrants to our country. So the work continues. Would you please give Diane Minnis a warm round of applause as a 78er? Thank you so much. And if I could welcome Steve on stage. Ladies and gentlemen, this is Steve, also another 78er. Steve Warren. Steve, what would be your message to young people here today who just don't know what this 78 thing is? What do they need to know? The first thing. I don't let go.
Oh, good. Well, I guess the first thing is we've come a long way since 78, but we've still got some hurdles to get over. So we really need your support to continue those struggles. Don't forget that things can easily go backwards. And we're also seeing many things happening overseas, particularly in European countries and African countries and Commonwealth countries, where it is still illegal to be rainbow people.
Exactly. Is there another message you'd like to give young people about 78 and what it means?
Well, I often feel we just got involved because it was important to us. Marriage equality was where a lot of young people came forward and joined in because it was important to all of our community. Get involved, participate. It's your voices that create positive change.
Earlier today I spoke to another 78er, Gary Schliemann, and one of the things he said is that we were young people when we began this struggle, and that campaigns like Black Lives Matter in the United States, fighting against police violence towards Afro-American people, and also the terrible latest killing in a school, that many young people are going to walk out of their schools on the 20th in order to begin a movement for gun control. So in a way, young people can change the world.
That's right. Your participation can make a difference, and we really need your support on those things. We were all quite young then. Some people say to me, you know, how old were you back then? Well, I was actually 21, but we were all young. We all got involved with issues, and we weren't just about the gay, lesbian, transgender rights. We were about many other issues: discrimination across racial areas, Aboriginal and Indigenous people rights, women's issues, whole range of issues, disability.
Thank you so much, Steve. I'm getting the wind up, but would you please thank Steve Warren, another 1978er, for just a quick moment before I bring on a Canadian singer who grew up on a Canadian reserve and who's going to bring us original music that she has composed on a reserve in Canada. But first of all, please welcome 78er Gary Schliemann. Gary, one of the things you wanted to mention was, for young people here today, is that they should find support to affirm who they are. Could I just let someone know they've got their mic on and it's coming out the speaker, and if our stage manager could stop that happening. So I come back to Gary Schliemann. Gary, why do you think young people need to get themselves into a group?
I think we don't exist just as individuals, and especially if we're having a hard time socially. We're pretty much the same people now as you are then as you are now. We really largely accepted that we were bad people back then, because, you know, New South Wales had a history of hanging gay people in the colonial days, and then there was jail up till 1984. So still in 1975 we were pretty hard against it, and it was really hard to even be aware of yourself and what you had to offer if you swallowed that line.
So you believe it's so important too for people to be aware that you are okay no matter what your immediate family or community may say, mindful of the 40% of the Australian population that did not support marriage equality. So again, you want young people to know you are okay.
That's the crucial thing, and usually we need to find support to really do that. But we've got to find it within ourselves to feel okay about ourselves first, and then get further support so we can speak up.
And why does 1978 matter 40 years later? How would you sum that up?
Oh, I think in the world today we're still seeing an awful lot of terrible anti-gay feeling in Russia, in Chechnya, in many of the Middle Eastern countries, and there are things in Australian politics too that we need to look to if we can afford to be non-conformist enough to look at reality.
Could I just say, I'm a practicing Christian. I go to the Uniting Church in South Sydney, Uniting Church, which welcomes gay and lesbian transgender people, and gay and lesbian people can be ordained within the Uniting Church. But I was originally an Anglican and went mainly to Anglican schools, and I personally was devastated when the Sydney Anglican Church donated $1 million of church money to oppose the marriage equality campaign. I think it is a shame. Thank you, sir. It should be used to help the disadvantaged, the poor, to feed the hungry. And while I'm not anyone to speak on behalf of Jesus, I honestly believe that's how he thinks church money should be spent. Gary, is there one last message for those who care enough to be standing and sitting in this sun to listen to you today?
Just feel good about yourself. Don't lionise people like the 78ers who, as heroes, that's nonsense. We're just ordinary people like you. We had the good fortune to find enough support to come out and to say what was in our hearts, and it worked.
Thank you so much, and a round of applause for Gary and all the other 78ers here today. Thank you so much.